So I was actually standing in my kitchen this morning, just kind of staring at this little amber bottle on my shelf. You know the exact one I'm talking about, sitting right there next to like the expired ibuprofen and the half-empty cough syrup. It just says vitamin D on the label.
Yeah.
And I had this moment where I realized that I have been taking this stuff, well, sporadically, whenever I actually remember, for years.
Yeah.
If you put a gun to my head right then and asked me, what is that pill actually doing inside your body right this second? I would have just said, bones.
Right, which is exactly what 99% of the population would say if you ask them. They'd
Yeah.
say, oh, it's the sunshine vitamin. It makes my bones strong. It stops me from getting rickets.
Yeah, exactly. Rickets. That old-timey disease from Charles Dickens novels where the kids have bowed legs. And look, I know it does that. I know it helps the body absorb calcium. But I started really digging into the research stack that you sent over for this deep dive today. And I have to be completely honest here. I feel like I've been lied to. Or at least I've been given this sort of Fisher-Price version of the truth.
I think that is a very fair assessment. The whole bone builder narrative is the headline, sure, but it's basically just the tip of the iceberg. The gap between what the general public thinks vitamin D does, keeping your skeleton from crumbling, and what the clinical data shows it actually does is probably the widest gap in modern nutrition.
Because we're not just talking about sturdy femurs here. We are looking at a stack of sources that links this single molecule to 9 major disease categories. And I don't mean like it might help a little bit. I mean significant statistical links to autoimmune diseases, cardiovascular failure, brain health, and even cancer.
It connects to almost everything. And to understand why that is, we actually have to start by correcting your opening statement. You called it a vitamin.
Well, I mean, it's on the bottle. It literally says vitamin D.
It is labeled that way, yes, but biochemically. It's a massive misnomer. A vitamin is usually something your body cannot make on its own, something you have to get from a plant or an animal. Like you get vitamin C from an orange, vitamin D is totally different. Your body actually manufactures it. It travels through the bloodstream. It binds to receptors on cells all over your body and gives them specific instructions.
That sounds a lot less like a nutrient and a lot more like a...
Like a hormone, exactly. It is a steroid hormone. It functions much more like testosterone or estrogen than it does like vitamin C. It is a master regulator. And that brings us to the first really big concept from the research, a word that popped up in the very first paragraph we looked at, which is pleiotropic.
Okay, let's stop right there. Pleiotropic. It sounds like something from a bad sci-fi movie. Like the pleiotropic aliens are attacking. But in biology, this word is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Break that down for me.
So it comes from the Greek. Pleo means more or many, and tropic means turning or changing. Roughly translated, it means multidirectional. If a drug or a nutrient is pleiotropic, it means it doesn't just have one single target. It's not a sniper rifle hitting one specific bullseye. It's more like a massive broadcast signal. It acts in various seemingly unrelated areas of the body, performing many critical functions simultaneously.
So unlike a specific medication that might just target, say, stomach acid production and nothing else, vitamin D is operating on this massive systemic level.
Exactly. Receptors for vitamin D, what we call VDRs, are found in almost every single tissue in the human body. The brain, the heart, the gut, the immune cells, the pancreas. If the receptors are there, it means those cells are actively waiting for a signal. If you don't have enough vitamin D, those cells are basically waiting for a phone call that never comes.
Wow, that is a haunting image. Billions of cells just waiting for instructions. So our mission today is to trace those phone calls. We're going to look at what happens when the call actually goes through, and the absolute disaster that happens when it doesn't. We need to talk about the immune system, specifically this gas and brake concept, which completely blew my mind. We need to talk about why we are all probably deficient right now and why the sun is a bit of a frenemy in this whole story. But let's start right in the engine room. Let's talk about the immune system.
This is usually where people get the most surprised, because we tend to think of immunity as this binary thing. You are either sick or you are healthy. Your immune system is either strong or it's weak.
Right, like I need to boost my immune system. I see that on marketing copy for orange juice literally all the time.
Right, the word boost. But think about that for a second. If you boost your immune system too much, what actually happens?
I assume it just fights off the flu faster.
That is the hope. But if you just blindly boost immune activity, you run the risk of the immune system actually attacking you. That is what an allergy is. That is what autoimmune disease is. It's an overactive, completely confused immune system. You don't want a boosted immune system. You want a modulated one. You want a smart system.
So vitamin D provides the intelligence.
Think of vitamin D as the conductor of an orchestra. You have the brass section, that's your aggressive killer cells, and you have the string section, that's your regulatory cells. If the brass plays way too loud, you get inflammation and tissue damage. If they don't play loud enough, the infection takes over and you get really sick. The conductor ensures the brass blasts the enemy but absolutely quiets down when the song is over. It modulates both the innate immune system, which is the one you're born with, and the acquired immune system, which learns over time.
Okay, let's look at the gas pedal first, the brass section, the part that actually goes out and kills the bugs. Because the research describes some pretty violent stuff happening at a cellular level here.
Oh, it is absolute chemical warfare. The source material highlights that vitamin D stimulates the maturation of monocytes. These are a type of white blood cell. Think of them as the raw recruits in the army. They are floating around in your blood, but they aren't quite ready for combat. Vitamin D is the drill sergeant that screams at them, shapes them up, and turns them into macrophages.
And macrophages are, they're like the Pac-Man of the body.
Literally. Macro means big. Phage means eater. Big eaters. Vitamin D stimulates a process called phagocytosis. It tells these cells to physically reach out, engulf bacteria or viruses, and digest them.
Just chomp them.
Just chomp them right up. But it also hands them a specialized weapon. This is the part I really love. Vitamin D participates in the production of antimicrobial peptides. The source specifically mentions two key players here, cathelicidin and beta-defensin 2.
Cathelicidin. It sounds like a cough drop brand, but I'm guessing it's definitely not.
No, it is a protein that acts essentially like a bayonet. It's a natural antibiotic that your body makes. When a macrophage eats a bacteria, it uses cathelicidin to physically punch holes in the bacteria's cell wall. It disrupts the membrane. The bacteria literally falls apart from the inside out.
So if I don't have enough vitamin D, my soldiers are still there, but they basically don't have bayonets.
Exactly. Or they are just incredibly sluggish. They don't produce enough of these peptides. So the bacteria survives the initial encounter and multiplies. That is the gas pedal function. Vitamin D actively saying, attack, destroy, kill the invader.
Okay, so that totally explains why it helps with the flu or a cold. It arms the troops. But here is the paradox that I really need you to explain to me. Because later in the notes, we see that vitamin D is used to treat autoimmune diseases, Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis. These are diseases caused by an immune system that is way too aggressive. It's actively attacking the body. So how in the world can the exact same molecule tell the army to kill, 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 and also tell them to chill out? That's just the thyroid. Leave it alone.
This is the absolute brilliance of the pleiotropic nature we discussed earlier. It controls the brake pedal simultaneously. While it ramps up the innate response against external invaders like bacteria, it suppresses the adaptive response that targets self-tissue.
How does it do that? Like, what is the chemical signal for chill out?
It increases the production of distinct immunosuppressive molecules. The source lists them as TGF-beta and interleukin-10. You can think of these as the peacekeepers or the diplomats of the immune system.
Like the hostage negotiators.
Yes, perfect analogy. They walk into the battlefield where the immune system is raging and they say, okay, the threat is gone, everyone lower your weapons. Specifically, vitamin D decreases the secretion of pro-inflammatory cytokines like interleukin-17 and interleukin-20, and crucially, it blocks the proliferation of B lymphocytes.
B lymphocytes, those are the ones that make antibodies, right?
Yes, and in an autoimmune disease, they are making antibodies that target your own organs. Vitamin D puts a massive damper on that production. It prevents the riot from spreading to the civilian population, so to speak.
That is incredibly nuanced. It really is a smart system. It's not just more immunity, it is correct immunity.
Precision. That is exactly the right word for it. Precision.
So let's apply this precision to the lungs. Respiratory health. Because we're heading into flu season, or out of it, depending on when you are listening in this deep dive, everyone is coughing, and the data here is pretty stark.
It is very stark. A huge analysis from 2017 mentioned in our source looked at multiple global studies involving thousands of participants, and it showed that supplementation significantly reduces the risk of upper respiratory tract infection.
We're talking about the common cold, the flu, bronchitis.
All of it. The mechanism is what we just discussed. The cathelicidin in the lining of the lungs acts as a chemical barrier. If your vitamin D levels are high, viruses have a much, much harder time breaking through that initial wall.
But there was a nuance in the data there that caught my eye. It worked best for a very specific group of people.
Yes, that's crucial. The study found that the effectiveness was highest, dramatically highest, in people who were already deficient. If you are sitting at a perfectly healthy level, taking more won't magically turn you into Superman. But if you are deficient, you are essentially walking around with your city gates wide open. Closing those gates makes a massive, measurable difference.
Which, spoiler alert for later in our discussion, is most of us. Most of us have the gates wide open.
Yeah.
But I want to pivot back to the brake pedal diseases for a minute. The source spent a lot of time on the thyroid, specifically Hashimoto's.
Right, autoimmune thyroiditis. This is a massive issue globally, especially for women. The body essentially views the thyroid gland as an alien organ.
An alien organ, what does that mean?
To your immune system, it looks like a transplant that doesn't belong there. It literally doesn't recognize the tissue as self anymore, so it launches a coordinated attack. This leads to severe chronic inflammation, and eventually, the thyroid tissue is just destroyed and stops producing hormones entirely.
And the research shows vitamin D can actually stop this.
Well, stop might be slightly too strong a word, but manage certainly fits the data. The research shows that administering vitamin D to Hashimoto's patients significantly lowered the specific antibodies responsible for this exact attack. The source lists them specifically as anti-TPO, which is antithyroperoxidase, and anti-TG antithyroglobulin.
Those are the exact markers doctors look for on a blood test to diagnose it, right?
Exactly. When those numbers drop, it means the sniper fire on your thyroid has significantly decreased. The fire is slowly being put out, it aids thyroid function, and reduces that chronic inflammatory state.
It's not just the thyroid, though. Let's talk about rheumatoid arthritis, RA. My aunt actually has this, and it's brutal. The joints just degrade over time.
Because the immune system is actively eating the cartilage in the joints, it's incredibly tragic. But the prevention stats here in the source are striking. A 2012 study showed that high vitamin D intake didn't just help manage the pain of existing RA, it actually reduced the risk of developing RA in the first place by slightly over 24%.
That's a quarter. You are telling me you can cut your risk of a debilitating, lifelong, painful disease by 25% just by having adequate levels of a vitamin.
A hormone.
A hormone.
Right.
I have to keep correcting myself on that. It's so hard to shake the vitamin branding.
It really is. But when you see stats like a 24% reduction in RAA, or the stats we're about to discuss regarding heart health, you realize this is structural. This is about the fundamental foundation of the house.
Let's go there next. The silent killers. Cardiovascular and metabolic health. Heart disease is the #1 killer globally. High blood pressure is usually the silent entry point for all of that. What is the link here with vitamin D?
Hypertension. The source explicitly notes that people with better vitamin D saturation have a 30% lower risk of developing hypertension.
30%. Again, these aren't marginal numbers. 2 or 3% is marginal. 30% is a revolution. How does a bone hormone lower blood pressure?
It directly involves something called the renin-angiotensin system.
Okay, you're getting a little technical on me there. Renin-angiotensin. Translate that for us.
Sure, think of it as your body's plumbing pressure control. It's a complex system of hormones that regulates exactly how constricted your blood vessels are and how much fluid your kidneys hold on to. If the system becomes overactive, your veins clamp down tight and the pressure naturally skyrockets. Vitamin D acts as a natural inhibitor of this entire system. It physically relaxes the pipes.
So it's basically a natural ACE inhibitor, like the actual drugs people take for high blood pressure.
Functionally, yes. It helps keep the blood vessels pliable and relaxed instead of clamped and rigid.
And then there's the other side of the metabolic coin. Diabetes, specifically type 2.
The absolute epidemic of our time, driven by insulin resistance.
I love the analogy of the doorbell for this. Can you walk us through how that works?
Absolutely. So imagine insulin is a delivery guy. He has a package of sugar, which is glucose, for your cells. He goes to the cell, he rings the doorbell, and the cell opens the door to take the sugar inside for energy. In type 2 diabetes, that doorbell is broken. The delivery guy is pounding on the door that represents high insulin levels in your blood, but the cell just isn't answering. So the sugar piles up out in the street, and that represents high blood sugar.
And vitamin D comes in and fixes the doorbell.
Pretty much. Vitamin D helps decrease tissue resistance to insulin. It repairs that connection. It helps the cell hear the knock again. The source mentions that it directly contributes to lowering blood glucose concentration and reducing HbA1c levels, which is glycated hemoglobin.
The source even went as far as to say some researchers consider it effective enough to be a natural support for treating type 2 diabetes.
That is a very bold claim in the mainstream medical world, but the underlying mechanism is totally sound. If you can improve insulin sensitivity, you are attacking the root cause of the disease, not just managing the symptoms.
Okay, we've done immunity, we've done heart health, we've done metabolism. Now we have to talk about the really big one, the one that scares absolutely everyone. Cancer.
This is usually the most controversial part of any nutritional or lifestyle discussion. We have to be very, very careful here.
I completely agree. Usually when I hear someone say vitamin X prevents cancer, I roll my eyes so hard it sounds like pure snake oil.
Yeah.
But I was reading through the stats in the source material we have, and I actually had to stop and double check them because they seemed way too high.
Which specific one stood out to you?
Colorectal cancer. The source claims that maintaining adequate saturation decreases the risk of development by 60%.
60%, yes.
That sounds fake to me. If a pharmaceutical company invented a pill today that cut cancer risk by 60%, it would cost $1,000 a pill, and they would win the Nobel Prize tomorrow. How can a cheap over-the-counter supplement do that? Is this just a correlation thing, like maybe healthy people who jog outside in the sun just happen to have high vitamin D and also don't get cancer?
That is exactly the skepticism we need to have. And yes, healthy user bias and correlation are always factors in observational studies, but the mechanism for colorectal cancer is uniquely, deeply tied to vitamin D. It comes back to a specific biological process called differentiation.
Explain differentiation.
Okay, so your colon lining is incredibly active tissue. The cells there are constantly dying and being replaced. New cells are born, they grow up, they do their specific job, and then they die. That's the normal cycle. When a cell is first born, it needs strict instructions on what to become. It needs to be told, you are a colon cell, you sit right here, you absorb water.
And what happens if it doesn't get those instructions?
It becomes a delinquent. It stays in a primitive, undifferentiated state. It doesn't do a job for the body, it just divides. It replicates and replicates and replicates. That uncontrolled division of immature cells, that is the literal definition of cancer.
And vitamin D is the instruction manual.
Vitamin D regulates the exact genes that control that differentiation process. It tells the cell, hey, grow up, do your job, and stop dividing. The colon seems to be particularly exquisitely sensitive to this signal. Without it, you have cellular chaos. With it, you have order. That's exactly why the 60% number, while completely staggering, is biologically plausible.
And it wasn't just colon cancer. The source listed lung cancer at an 11% reduction, breast cancer at 15%, ovarian cancer at 20%.
And thyroid cancer at 30%. It's a remarkably consistent pattern across the board. Vitamin D keeps cells behaving normally. When your levels drop, cellular discipline just breaks down.
It's not just prevention either. The source also mentioned mortality rates.
Correct. Even if you do get sick, the data suggests that supplementation can reduce mortality specifically from colorectal cancer by 24%. It actively helps the body fight the chaotic growth even after it starts.
It's just staggering. It really reframes the entire importance of this molecule for me. It's not just about staying healthy in a general sense, it's about defensive architecture against cellular chaos.
Absolutely. And speaking of complex architecture, we need to look upstairs now. We need to talk about the brain.
Neurodegenerative diseases. Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, basically the stuff of nightmares as we get older.
Right, and the brain is absolutely covered in vitamin D receptors. Now think about that. Why would the brain need receptors for sunlight?
That's a really good question, actually. The brain is encased inside a dark, thick skull. It literally never sees the sun.
Because, again, it's an evolutionary signal. Vitamin D tells the brain that resources outside are plentiful, the environment is good. When those levels drop, the brain struggles to maintain itself. A major 2014 meta-analysis showed that those with low levels had a twofold higher risk of developing Parkinson's disease.
Twofold. That's double the risk.
Double. And for dementia, severe deficiency increases the risk by 32%. For Alzheimer's, it's a 34% increase.
We so often think of Alzheimer's as just a genetic lottery. You get the bad gene, you get the disease, nothing you can do. But this strongly suggests there is a massive modifiable risk factor here, something we can actually control day to day.
You can't change your DNA, obviously, but you can absolutely change your vitamin D status. It physically protects the neurons. It reduces inflammation in the brain, what we call neuroinflammation, which is now recognized as a key driver of Alzheimer's progression.
And on a much more day-to-day level, let's talk about sleep, because I feel like the whole world is just constantly tired right now.
The tired and wired generation. The source highlights that deficiency is deeply linked to shorter sleep duration, greater daytime sleepiness, and significantly worse overall sleep quality.
So if you're dragging yourself through the day drinking 4 cups of coffee just to survive, it might not just be that you stayed up watching Netflix until 1 a.m. It might be a chemical deficiency.
It very well could be. The brainstem, which physically controls your sleep cycles, has an incredibly high density of vitamin D receptors. If those receptors are sitting empty, the rhythm just breaks down.
Okay, so we've covered the really heavy hitters, but the source had a section I sort of mentally called the leftovers. Things that didn't neatly fit into the big buckets but are still super important. We have to mention bones, just to be thorough, right?
Of course, it increases mineral density. It reduces fracture risk in adults and seniors by 14% to 30%. And that is the difference between a minor bruise and a broken hip, which is often a death sentence for someone over 80.
And what about skin?
Atopic dermatitis, or AZS, commonly known as eczema, vitamin D actively reduces its severity, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. Eczema is runaway inflammation of the skin. Vitamin D is the master anti-inflammatory.
And pregnancy. This one seemed highly critical.
Huge. Deficiency isn't just bad for the baby's bone development, it dramatically increases the mother's risk of preeclampsia. That's a dangerous sudden spike in blood pressure during pregnancy that can severely threaten both the mom and the baby.
But the one that really surprised me in this leftover section was anemia.
Yes, the silent link.
Usually when someone says they're anemic, my brain immediately goes to, oh, eat a steak, take some iron, maybe check your B12. I never, ever think vitamin D.
Most people don't, and honestly, doctors often miss this entirely too. You can have a patient faithfully taking iron supplements for months with absolutely no improvement in their blood work. Why? Because the bone marrow, which is the factory where red blood cells are actually made, requires vitamin D to function.
So the factory is essentially on strike.
Exactly. The raw materials, like the iron, are piling up outside the factory doors, but the workers, the bone marrow cells, aren't building the cars, the red blood cells. If you have really stubborn anemia that won't respond to iron, you need to check your D levels.
Okay. We have firmly established that this stuff is important. It's the conductor, the mechanic, the architect. The very obvious next question is, how do we actually get it?
And this is where the story gets incredibly frustrating.
The source breaks it down into two main categories, the sun and the plate. Let's start with the sun because biologically, historically, that is supposed to be our main source.
It is. The sun rule is that 80 to 90% of your supply is supposed to come from direct synthesis in the skin via UV radiation. We are essentially solar-powered panels.
Okay, 90%. So I just need to go outside more.
If only it were that simple. The source material outlines the very specific conditions required for the synthesis to actually happen, and when you read them, you suddenly realize why we are all totally deficient. The source focuses on Central Europe, specifically Poland, but this applies to the northern US, Canada, the UK, anywhere at those latitudes.
Give me the conditions. Let's hear them.
Condition 1 is season. Effective synthesis only happens from May through September.
Wait, pause right there. So if I go out for a run in January, it's a beautiful, crisp winter day, bright blue sky, the sun is shining right on my face, I'm out there for a full hour. How much vitamin D am I making?
Zero.
Literally zero.
Zero. The sun is just too low in the sky, the angle is too oblique, the atmosphere acts like a giant filter and blocks out the specific UVB waves needed to trigger the chemical reaction in your skin. In the winter, the sun provides you with light and heat, but absolutely no vitamin D.
That is incredibly frustrating. We are constantly told to go outside, get some fresh air, it's good for you. But biologically, for this specific crucial nutrient, it's a complete waste of time in the winter.
For vitamin D synthesis, yes.
Oh, wait.
It's clinically referred to as the vitamin D winter, and depending on where you live, it lasts 6 full months.
Okay, so May to September. Summer only. What's the next rule?
Condition 2 is time of day. You have to be out between 10:00 a.m. and 3:00 p.m.
Which is exactly when every single human being is locked inside at work or in school.
Correct. The sun has to be high overhead. There's a great little rule of thumb called the shadow rule. If your shadow on the ground is longer than you are tall, you aren't making vitamin D.
Oh, that's actually a really good tip. Short shadow equals good. Long shadow equals bad.
Exactly. And then there is condition 3, exposure. You need at least 15 solid minutes with 18% of your body completely uncovered. That usually means your forearms and your lower legs.
So just my face and hands aren't enough.
No, you need sufficient surface area. And here is the real kicker for modern society. No sunscreen.
The dermatologist's absolute nightmare.
Sunscreen specifically blocks UVB rays. That is its entire job. It protects you from burns and skin cancer, but it also blocks vitamin D synthesis almost completely. Even a weak SPF 15 cuts your synthesis by 99%.
So to get my natural vitamin D, I have to be half naked, in the middle of a workday, in July, without wearing any sunscreen for at least 15 minutes.
That is the baseline evolutionary requirement. And because almost none of us do that anymore, we are all just running on fumes.
So the natural reaction to hearing that is, well, I'll just eat healthy. I hate the sun anyway, or I work in a cubicle all day. I'll just eat my way to high vitamin D.
The diet myth. The source is very, very blunt about this. No, you absolutely cannot.
Why not? Nature usually provides a backup plan for these things.
The backup plan here is extremely weak. Food only accounts for 10 to 20% of the supply, at best. It is physically impossible to cover your full physiological demand through food alone if you are actively avoiding the sun.
What foods even have it naturally?
Eel.
Eel. Like sushi eel?
Do you eat a lot of eel on a daily basis?
I can honestly say I have never once bought an eel at the grocery store.
Wild salmon has it. Herring. There are trace amounts in cheese, egg yolks, and certain mushrooms, but the sheer volume you would have to consume is ridiculous. You need to eat dozens of eggs every single day, or a pound of wild salmon every single day just to hit the baseline.
So if the sun is totally unreliable because of our geography and our indoor lifestyle, and food is mathematically insufficient, we are basically left with exactly one option.
Supplementation. It's not a sign of failure to supplement, it's simply a requirement of modern living.
The source actually gave us a very specific cheat sheet for dosage based on age. I really want to read these out because this is the actionable stuff people actually need. There is so much confusion about numbers out there. Some old medical guidelines say 400 IU is totally enough. This source strongly disagrees.
400 IU is enough to prevent you from getting rickets. It is nowhere near enough for optimal systemic health or the cancer prevention we talked about.
Okay, here are the official guidelines from the source. Newborns are 400 to 600 IU. Children up to age 10 are 600 to 1,000 IU. Adolescents, adults, and seniors up to age 75 are 800 to 2,000 IU. And seniors over 75 jump to 2,000 to 4,000 IU.
Notice the big jump for seniors there.
Yeah, why do they need double the amount?
It's all about efficiency. As we age, our skin naturally becomes thinner and significantly less efficient at synthesizing vitamin D from whatever sun we do get. And our gut also becomes less efficient at absorbing it from pills or food. So you basically need a higher input to get the exact same blood output.
And what about pregnant or breastfeeding women?
A flat 2,000 IU is the general recommendation there. To protect against that preeclampsia risk we talked about earlier, and to ensure the baby's development.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Can I overdose on this?
Yeah?
Can I take too much if I just start downing pills?
You can, but it is actually very hard to do. Vitamin D toxicity is remarkably rare. You usually have to take massive doses, like 50,000 IU daily for months on end to get into real trouble. But obviously the best way to know is to just test it.
A blood test.
Yes. Don't guess. Test. The specific marker you want is called 25-hydroxycholecalciferol.
Wow. That is quite a mouthful.
Just look for 25-OHD on the lab slip, or calcidiol. You want to know your exact saturation. Are you sitting at 20? That's severely deficient. Are you at 50? That's optimal. Good job. Are you pushing 100? Maybe back off the supplements bit.
Okay, last practical tip before we close this out. This is what the source called the absorption hack. So I have my bottle, I have my correct dosage. I pop the pill with my morning coffee on my way out the door to work. Am I good?
You might actually be wasting your money.
Wait, why?
Because vitamin D is fat soluble. It does not dissolve in water. If you take it with black coffee or just a glass of water on a totally empty stomach, a significant portion of it will slide right through your digestive tract unabsorbed and end up in the toilet.
So I need grease. I need to eat it with bacon.
You need some kind of fat. It doesn't have to be a massive greasy breakfast. A slice of avocado works. Eggs. A spoonful of olive oil on a salad. Even full-fat yogurt. The fat physically triggers your gallbladder to release bile. That bile emulsifies the vitamin and actively allows it to cross the gut wall and enter your bloodstream.
So the golden rule is always take it with a meal.
Always take it with a meal containing fat. Morning or evening really doesn't matter for absorption. The fat content matters.
And one tiny detail on units that confused me at first. Micrograms versus IU.
Oh, the math, yes.
Yeah.
1 microgram, which is often written as mug on labels, equals exactly 40 international units, or IU. So if you pick up a bottle and it says 50 micrograms, don't panic that it's a super low dose. 50 times 40 is 2,000 IU. That's a very standard adult dose.
Just multiply by 40.
Got it. It really helps to check the back of the label carefully so you don't accidentally take way too little or way too much just because of a unit conversion issue.
So let's try to wrap this up. We started this deep dive thinking about bones and rickets. We've somehow ended up talking about a master hormone that controls our immune system's gas and brakes, prevents devastating autoimmune diseases, slashes colon cancer risk by up to 60%, physically protects our brains from Alzheimer's, and keeps our blood pressure in check by relaxing our veins.
It really is the silent workhorse of human health. And the real tragedy of all this is that deficiency is a totally silent issue. You don't feel it immediately. You don't wake up one Tuesday and say, ouch, my vitamin D is low today. You just slowly, silently, over decades, develop much higher risks for all these chronic diseases.
Because it connects to almost everything. It really is like the foundation of a house. If the foundation is weak, cracks are going to appear everywhere. In the walls, the ceiling, the floor. And we spend all of our time and money fixing the cracks, right? Taking pills for blood pressure, using steroid creams for eczema, taking painkillers for arthritis, all while completely ignoring the crumbling foundation.
That is a perfect summary. We're endlessly treating the symptoms of a crumbling foundation instead of pouring some cheap concrete.
So here's the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with today. We learned that vitamin D acts like this powerful hormone regulating thousands of intricate processes. We also learned that our modern lifestyle, staying indoors all day, wearing clothes, living in northern latitudes, literally blocks our primary evolutionary source, which is the sun.
We have effectively completely removed ourselves from our natural habitat.
Exactly. So the question is, are we essentially living in a chronic state of evolutionary mismatch? They're these Stone Age bodies that expect to be running around outside all day, but we are living in a space age world. Our bodies literally expect the sun to signal them, and we give them fluorescent office lights instead.
And that gap, that huge mismatch between what our DNA expects and what we give it, creates physiological friction. And in biology, friction always manifests as disease.
And it makes you wonder, could correcting this single widespread deficiency be the absolute simplest, cheapest public health intervention currently available to us? We are talking about pennies a day for a supplement.
If everyone suddenly had optimal blood levels, the sheer burden on the global healthcare system for things like cancer, diabetes, and even just the seasonal flu would drop incredibly. The return on investment would be massive.
So to everyone listening, check your labels. Check your 25-OHD blood levels the next time you see your doctor if you can. And please remember the fat rule when you take your next dose. Don't waste your time and money taking it with a glass of water on an empty stomach.
A little bit of olive oil or some eggs really goes a long way.
Thanks for exploring all this with me, and thanks to all of you for listening.